Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Johnson, and I'm a faculty sponsor of the USCL Chemistry Club. Today, I'm excited to introduce our speaker, Mr. Jonathan Hanni. Mr. Hanni is a lead scientist at Duke Energy's Catawba Nuclear Station. He earned his master's and bachelor's degrees in physics from the University of Oregon and Washington State University. He's also a certified health physicist. Today, Mr. Hanni will be talking about how to build a non-research scientific career using physics as a starting point. Please join me in welcoming our speaker.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here with you all today. Just give you a quick outline of what my talk's going to focus on. Talk a little bit more about my background. Talk about some of the things I found as I got out into the workplace, how to use my technical skills, how to develop soft skills, and some general advice for whatever career path you end up in. And then I've also got some information about science careers at Duke Energy. Talk a little bit about our internship programs and things like that. I did bring some swag that you're all welcome to as well. All right, so as was mentioned, I have a background in physics. I went to Washington State University for my undergrad. I went to Oregon for my graduate work. All in school and on a couple internships. I was a co-author on 8 research papers in 3 different fields. And then after I graduated, I did none of that anymore. So my original plan was to be a professor, be a principal investigator in a national lab, something along those lines, be a research scientist. And I ended up switching gears. It took me 7 years to get my bachelor's degree. I had some personal growth things to go through. I call it the senior crap. At one point, I was going to school part-time and working at a gas station. That's a good motivator. You don't want to have that as your full-time career. So that helped me straighten things out. Then I went to graduate school, did a PhD program. After 2 years, I was like, well, I don't know if those 3 extra letters after my name are as important to me now. I've been in school for 9 years. It's time to look for a job. So then I ended up as a health physicist. When I saw that posting, I said, well, I can do half that job. I don't know what the health part is, but I know physics. And if you don't know what health physics is, it's also referred to as radiation protection. So it was a field developed during the Manhattan Project to make sure that we were keeping the workers and the public safe from ionizing radiation. So I did that for 14 years. First 6 of that was at a weapons site at Washington State that was part of the Manhattan Project. And now it's a big environmental cleanup site. They don't make any new weapons material there, but they have 53 million gallons of high-level radioactive waste that they're still trying to figure out what to do. So did that for 6 years, and then I decided I wanted to do something that's actually useful to people and start selling electricity. So I came to work at the Catawba Nuclear Station in York, South Carolina. I was in the radiation protection department there for several years, and now I'm in their operations department. I'm currently working on my senior reactor operator license to run the plant. So that's me in a nutshell. Some things I want to focus on. If you go into a science-based career that's not in academia, you're still going to need to rely on your technical skills. You're also going to have some soft skills. The 3 I want to focus on kind of, in the big picture, data analysis, that's really critical at all companies, regardless of what role you have. Science, I think, gives you a good background in problem solving. You have a good logical process to use to tackle issues that come up. And then quality assurance is also a big thing when you get out into the workforce. So data analysis. We use analytics for everything nowadays, even in football games. They determine whether they want to punt or go for it on 4th down based on what the computer tells them. So it's kind of been a big explosion in analytics overall. we use it a lot in my field for our performance improvement. And that's either equipment, improvement, if we're having a problem where this pump keeps having a similar failure, then we'll try to figure out what's wrong with that. Maybe we need to change out the bearings to some new alloy or something like that. We can use it for quantitative problems like that. We also do a lot of qualitative analysis, for having issues with human performance and seeing a lot of errors. What kind of behavioral actions can we take to resolve that? Data analysis, more quantitative standpoint, when you're verifying compliance with regulations, that's a big part of a lot of industries. The nuclear power, we have a lot of regulations with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, but a lot of industries, they'll have state effluent requirements. If you're going to be releasing chemical effluents out of a smokestack or into a river or something like that, there's concentrations that you have to be below. So having a scientific background, understanding statistics, being able to set up a methodology to test your effluent stream and show that it's compliant with those requirements is a key part of what we do. And then market analysis. Depending on what industry you're in, if you're selling widgets to customers, you're going to want to look at trends in that market, look what your competitors are doing, look and see where you have potentials for growth. So statistics is probably the math that I've used the most in my career. After I got out of grad school, I don't solve differential equations very often anymore. I don't use, linear algebra maybe, but it's mostly statistics and being able to design an experiment or design a process and then have ways to measure whether you're being effective. Problem solving skills, as I mentioned, that's something I think science probably gives one of the best foundations for solving problems. And it's a little different in industry. A lot of times you're constrained by project costs, the people you have available to do the project. Sometimes you're going to need to hire an outside third party to do a project because they have the expertise and you don't have it in-house. Real world problems, the best solution, or the best solution is the one that you can afford to do in the budget you have to do it. So, I'll give a few examples here. We had a project a few years back. When we pull our fuel out of the reactor, we store it in a pool of water for 5 or 6 years. And we let it go through radioactive decay. It puts out a lot of heat. We let it cool off for the first few years. And then we'll move it into these dry canisters. And, they're big concrete casks. They provide shielding to keep the radiation doses below limits. And we store it outside in these concrete casks. We were getting ready to pour a new pad to put more of these casks on. And if we had trained all the construction workers that were going to be doing that project as radiation workers and go through this extra process to get them qualified so we could have a little bit higher dose rates when they're working, it was going to cost a lot more money. And a lot of the construction workers aren't necessarily proficient in technical subjects. So we wanted to come up with a way to do the project without having to go through that extra expense. And the best way to do that is to lower those radiation levels in the area where they're going to be working. So what we came up with, water is a really good shield for radiation. And we basically got these big, they look like sealand containers, but we filled them with water and used that as a shield wall to knock the radiation down. So it wasn't very expensive to rent these containers, fill them with water. That saved us a lot of money in the end. It's kind of an outside the box thing. And we were in the meeting. I said, it'd be nice if we had like a big fish tank that we could use, put in front of it. So it was like, well, we could get these containers. So that worked out. In that case, it was, really trying to focus on the cost and the resources part of this. equation. A lot of what I do isn't really R&D type focus anymore. I'm not really going to be out there discovering some new physical law or something like that. A lot of it is applying physics or science to a specific problem. So another example that came up and completely out of left field for me, right after the COVID pandemic started, at the very beginning when we weren't sure how long it was going to live on surfaces, somebody coughed on surface, how many days do you have to wait before it dies off and that kind of thing. We were concerned if we had a outbreak in our control room that we could really, you have to have a minimum number of operators to keep the plant safe, even when you shut it down. And so we were looking at, well, how will we sterilize the control boards? So I got a crash course in UV light, and we had to look up a bunch of engineering and research articles. How big are these viruses? What wavelength do we need to use? Then we bought some UV lights from different vendors. We bought little detectors to look at how much irradiance was being put onto surfaces, and we did a little research project to come up with a solution if we had an outbreak. Here's the technology we have ready to go, so we wouldn't be, reacting after the fact. So that was one that I didn't know anything about UV light. Didn't know anything about, sterilization using UV light. Now I know a fair bit about it. It just comes up. The other big difference I found with industry compared to academia, when you're solving problems, a lot of times you don't have nearly as much time to do it. If you're in grad school working on a thesis, you have a couple of years, and you become very, very knowledgeable about very, very small, narrow field. With these projects come up all the time. You might have a few days to figure something out. You might have a couple hours. If something goes wrong at the plant and this component's not working right, we need to figure that out, because that component's, we have a few hours, so much time before we have to shut the plant down because that pump isn't working. So you have to be able to think on your feet. You have to, you have to be able to be flexible in your approach. Another key aspect, I think, scientists are well suited to this. We're very detail-oriented people, very precise in how we look at the world. But quality assurance in any industry is very, very important. Nuclear power, if we put in equipment that's not very robust, that could be a really bad day for everybody. Right? If you're on the production line at a company making some product, and your product is not consistently made or something like that, you're gonna lose all your customers. So key things I found that helped me, attention to detail. You want to make sure that you have a questioning attitude. Do thorough peer reviews. When I send a paper out when I ask my friend to review, or my coworker to review calculation I've been doing or something like that, the most frustrating thing in the world is when everybody sends back no comment. Because I don't know if that means that I'm perfect. I assume I'm not, or they didn't even read it. And a good example of that, we have 6 nuclear sites at Duke, and we had a guy at our corporate office that was doing a calculation to add some information into the document we use to verify compliance with NRC requirements. He did this calculation for each of the 6 sites, and he sent it to myself and my 5 counterparts at the other sites and asked to review. So my approach when I did the review, I read the body of the text and what equations you used and what the sources of the initial input data was. And I replicated all that myself, made my own Excel spreadsheet, set up those equations myself, did my calculations, then I looked at his spreadsheet. And there was a factor of 10 difference between the 2 spreadsheets. So I called him up, we talked through it, figured out where the error was. And then got it fixed. But he said that all 5 of the other sites had the same 10, factor of 10 issue in their calculation, and nobody said anything about it. They all said no comment. So, it's a lot easier to fix a problem up front than to explain to the regulator why you're off by a factor of 10 on all your calculations, and you've been using it wrong for several years. So, you gotta set your ego aside. We all are fallible. I've made errors on calculations. I appreciate it when my colleagues catch them. It really is a team sport. I'll get to that more in a minute with the soft skills, but attention to detail and really being thorough in your work is a key component in your career. So the technical skills, when I went into health physics, the technical skills were pretty straightforward for me. I understood how the instrumentation worked. I understood all the physical principles behind it. I understood the radioactive decay process. It took me a little bit longer to develop some of these soft skills. These are just as important in your career as those technical skills, especially these two right here: communication and collaboration. I always hated group projects when I was in, junior high, high school, because I was the one that ended up doing all the work, and half the people were doing it. In your career, it's all collaboration, and you're just going to have to get used to that. And you're going to have to learn how to delegate things to other people. You're going to have to learn to get feedback and receive feedback from other people. And then I'll also talk a little bit about professional networking. That's very useful thing to employ throughout your career as well. So for communication, written and verbal communication are very important. And you need to tailor it to the audience. So here's some examples I put in the bullet points of different audience that you might be tailoring your message to. But each of these people has different needs for how much detail they want, what types of information they really are interested in. Working with your client. And your client can be a customer of your company, or it could be another department within your company. I mean, if you're in the engineering department, the chemistry department might need your help on developing something for equipment that they need, or the supply chain people are going to be providing a service to get the parts for the operations department. So working with your clients, that's probably where you're going to need the most amount of information, because you're going to want to be very detailed in here's what we're going to provide, here's what the specifications are, here's what the price is going to be, all that stuff. Your peers within your own group, that might be more of a, we review each other's work, we found solving those are the people that you're working with to actually come up with a solution. Management doesn't usually have a lot of time in their day to get all the details. They need enough information to know what the problem is, what proposed solution you have, what's already been done, and what still needed to be done. I found with my own interaction with management, if I just go and say, look, we got this problem, if I don't come to them with and here's what we should do about it, or here's a couple options we can look at, they're not too happy with that. They want you to be proactive, and they want you to make the best use of their time as well. And then investors, they probably need the least amount of detailed information. They really are looking at it from the 50,000-foot view. What's the big picture on how the company is doing? What are your plans for expanding your product line or whatever? Collaboration, as I mentioned, it is all group work when you get out into the workplace. It's usually multiple disciplines involved in the projects. You need to have a diversity of ideas. Make sure that you set yourself up not to have a groupthink approach. At Duke, we have we usually try to assign someone to be the devil's advocate before we even start the meeting. So that way, their whole job is to kind of challenge what the rest of the group is talking about, so we make sure we're not overlooking something. And another thing that's very helpful, we have working groups in my industry. I don't know how every other industry works, but we have a lot of workshops for people that all have the same type of reactor. They have an owners group. So my plant was a Westinghouse design. All Westinghouse plant owners have these working groups. So if they encounter a problem at one place, they can share that information with other places. So we all learn from each other. We also have support organizations. There's the Electric Power Research Institute that does a lot of science projects for us. So we don't have a lot of time at the plant to develop new chemistry for our reactor coolant, but at EPRI, they have a whole team of people that's all they do. They want to look at how to minimize corrosion in our piping. So they'll look at what kind of chemistry they can adjust in the water to minimize that corrosion. So there's opportunities to interface with colleagues, learn from each other. This kind of ties into that last bullet. Professional networking is probably one of the biggest benefits in your career, and it takes a lot of forms. I mentioned those working groups, going to conferences. We have journals. In the field of health physics, there's the Health Physics Society. They have annual meetings. They have continuing education classes. They have a lot of resources for people to be able to reach out, connect with their peers. They have their own job boards, that kind of stuff. Social media is becoming ever more important in our day-to-day lives, but that's the whole reason I'm here to talk today. Is Alexis Brantley found me on LinkedIn, reached out and said, "Hey, would you like to come give a presentation to our club?" So I recommend making use of all of these. Continuing education, I really want to focus on that a little bit. When you finish your degree, that's the starting point for your career. That's not the ending point. It gives you the foundation of the skills you'll use later on throughout the rest of your career, but you always want to be learning. I've also found that one of the best ways to keep up your learning is to start teaching. So at my plant, I've taught a lot of our continuing training classes for our radiation protection technicians. You get so much better at your understanding of a subject when you have to answer other people's questions about it, and you have to teach it to other people. And especially since everybody has a different learning style, and everybody's going to be looking at it from some other perspective. You'll get a question out of left field, right? I've never thought about that before. Let me get back to you. Spend a couple minutes, you think through it. You get some great insights from somebody's question. So I really encourage everybody to keep that in mind. There's also professional certifications. So as was mentioned, I'm a certified health physicist. What that entailed was there's a 2-part exam that the first part's 150 multiple choice questions. You can take that in the first 2 years of your career. And then within the first 6 years of your career, you take the second part, more essay style. But after you get that certification, they require you to take 80 continuing credit hours every 4 years. So they give credits for going to the conferences, if you write papers in a journal, if you teach classes or you attend classes, they'll give you credit for that. But it's a great way to stay engaged, keep your finger on the pulse of your industry. The last 4 years, I've been on the exam committee for that. So I've helped develop the exams, and the worst part is grading them. Some people's handwriting leaves a little bit to be desired, but that's one way to keep sharp. Like I said, I don't do a lot of math in my job day to day anymore. I do a lot of Excel, but doing something like that where it's more of a textbook style question, I have to remember how to do that stuff. So it's a good way to keep keep fresh on your career. Now, as far as generic advice I would give anybody about a career, regardless of what field you go into, be flexible. As I talked about in my career, I've done a lot of different things. I was doing research in 3 different areas early in my career. Kind of fell into this health physics thing, and now I'm doing operations at my plant. People get burned out after a while. After about 5 or 6 years of doing the same job, so okay, I need a new challenge. I want something that's going to stimulate me again. So, be willing to change jobs. So that could be internally within your company. Could also be externally. You need to be willing to move where the opportunity is. So I've lived in 9 states throughout my life. 4 since I got out of graduate school. So each opportunity brings new challenges. It's not always going to be better though. That grass is greener cliche does apply, but you definitely want to be able, or you're willing to take on new responsibilities, try new challenges. It's going to, help you build your resume up. That's also going to help you personally as you don't get the rut. You're your own best advocate. Nobody is going to take charge of your career other than you. Your boss probably likes you as a person, but if you're not getting what you need from your job, you need to talk to your boss about that. Let them know, hey, here's where I'm at right now. Here's where I want to be 2 years from now. What can we do to help me get there? And that might be, we'll probably give you some new interim challenges, or we want to send you to some training, things like that. You've got to keep an open dialogue with your management to let them know what you're providing to them and what they need to be providing to you. So that was the part that I had prepared. I did talk with my HR department before I came out to give the talk, so I could put some information out there about Duke Energy's internship programs and so forth. So we'll go through those slides and we'll have some room for some questions at the end. So Duke Energy, I've been there for about 10 years. It is a pretty good place to work. We provide an essential product that everybody needs. We all like having our electricity in our lives. We do have internship opportunities every year, typically during the summers. I'll talk a little bit about what a good internship should look like. So we are a great place to work, like I said. We do have clear career paths. At my plant, there's a lot of people that can come in at a technician level and then work their way into supervision, work their way in management. We do have a lot of leadership development. That's one thing that I found jobs I worked at before I got to Duke is sometimes the manager has no idea what they're doing. Just because somebody was good as an individual contributor doesn't mean that they're going to be a good manager. And Duke does try to provide guidance and development before you even get into your supervisor role. So you're going to be ready when you get. We do have a good work-life balance. Most of our nuclear sites are on a 4-10 schedule, so you work Monday through Thursday. Some of us are on rotating shifts. In operations, I'm on a rotating shift schedule, which graveyard shifts are kind of tedious after a little while, but you get more time off overall because out of every 70 days, I work 36. So it's not too bad. We do have pretty good stability as industry. Utilities are kind of one of those things that you can't offshore it. You can't, everybody needs the electricity regardless of what the economy is doing. We are in a regulated utility market, which also means that we're not having to sell our electricity wholesale and being underbid by other projects. So it does help provide good stability for Duke. We do have a lot of community involvement, and We do a lot of fundraisers. We work with, we used to just use United Way every fall. They would match your donations. Now they will let you pick whatever charity you want to be involved with, and they'll match those donations. We also have a lot of employee resource groups. These are great for people at any point in your career. They have something focused more on like younger people. We have like it's not one that's listed on the bullet points there, but they have North American young people in nuclear, for example. And so it's a good way to connect with other people that are at a similar point in their career, similar interests. We have the Business Women's Network. We have Asian Inclusion Network, Disability Outreach and Inclusion, a whole bunch of different organizations and interest groups. And you can join one of these without being, I don't have to be a woman to help support the Business Women's Network, or we have Women in Nuclear is another one. So it's a good way to really advocate for each other. They'll do book club type things, stuff like that. They might do a leadership class just with their group to kind of focus on aspects that their group is interested in. So that's another good opportunity to do, but we try to be supportive of each other within the company. For an internship, typically during the summer, they're a few months long. You'll usually have a big project that you'll be assigned to. You have to give a presentation at the end. There'll be some touch points with the internship coordinators at your site. The interns will get together. I don't remember what the period is. Use it once a week or couple weeks, kind of touch base with what they're working on. They do have some rotational programs where you might do a couple different departments early in your career. They do have 401k participation for interns. And you do have access to those employee resource groups and all that I just talked about. With an internship, some advice I have there. I've seen a few different interns in our department since I've worked at Duke. There were a couple that were really there to work, to learn. So we gave them, a little bit more involved projects. One guy was working on, developing a methodology to use this new piece of equipment we got called a gamma camera that helps you see heat maps of where radioactive sources are in piping and stuff like that. So we gave him that project. He worked with the vendor that made the camera to help come up with a reproducible methodology we could use and deploy it at the plant. Wrote the owner's manual, gave demonstrations to the department. Did a great job. They got a lot of experience out of that. We had another intern that I think I talked to her maybe once. The entire 3 months she was there, I think I heard 2 sentences from her. Nobody really remembered anything about what her internship was. I don't know if she got anything out of it. I honestly don't know if she was even there most of the time. So it's you're going to be in the driver's seat in your career, and you got to make it worthwhile. It's all about the amount of effort you put in. Here's some examples of different engineering opportunities at Duke. Chemists and physicists, biologists, any of the sciences can really fit in with these fields. So, we've got nuclear, we've got chemical, civil, all the different engineering types. At the plants themselves, we've got a whole variety of different types of plants. We used to have a lot of coal, and we've been phasing that out. So, all right. And we also have other opportunities in fields, finance and accounting, information technology, computer science. Not all of our careers require a 4-year degree, but there are opportunities if you have just an associate's degree for various. All right. Now I'll open it up for questions, interactions, or.
I have a question. for the waste that is generated? Is it being shipped anywhere or is it staying on site?
It's currently staying on site, and that's more of a political question than a technical question. The government was building a site in Nevada called Yucca Mountain. But basically they dug a tunnel into the side of a mountain and they were gonna bury the waste there. But the people in Las Vegas that live 90 miles away from that were not too happy that all the waste was gonna be in their backyard. So politically that got shut down and they haven't come up with a new solution. The waste itself is in a very stable form. It's still in the metal rods that we use in the reactor. When we put it in that canister, it's got a helium cover gas inside the canister. And it's got natural convection. There's some vents on the concrete cask. The fuel's inside a steel container inside. And you get natural convection going through to keep it cool. And it's very robust design. Lasts for, I think they're licensed for 40 or 60 years initially. But we're waiting on the federal government to figure out what they're going to do with the waste line. Yes?
Is the internship paid?
Yes.
How
Yeah.
much?
I don't know what the going rate is now. It's been a couple of years since the last time I was directly involved with all the internships, but it's competitive. For the internships, you can go to the Duke Energy website, dukeenergy.com, and go to the careers section and just search under intern/co-op, I think is what all those jobs are listed under. And they have a variety of them at different locations. So, you know, corporate office and the various power plants.
Other questions? Other questions? All right, well, join me in thanking our speaker. Oh, yes, so, we'd like to get a picture outside. Would you guys, can you guys gather around outside?